Hi everyone, I'm back. I'm going to show you guys today how to name acids to go from a compound to a name and from a name to a compound. You haven't done acids before, so this is something brand new that you didn't see in Science 10. So this is a little bit harder, but I think we can get you through it and just follow these few simple little rules and we should be just fine. So this is a little bit of a page that that you should maybe pause the video and write down somewhere. This is these little mnemonics are very helpful when it comes to doing acid naming. So these, my ride has hydraulics. This is spelt wrong, but we need it spelt this way for the acid naming. So this is a little thing to remember. I ate something icky, and Sprite is delicious. You can see that these were in the video that I showed you with the Tyler DeWitt guy that I've been uploading for you. These are just things you would have to study. You would have to memorize these for a test. Right now, everything's open book, so you're okay to write this down and use it as we go along. Something else I wanted to point out for this chapter, for this unit, on page 257 in your textbook, there's a polyatomic ion, some of the common ones listed there. I did upload this polyatomic sheet that you've seen me work with last week. You can print this, or maybe you wrote it down and that's great. But if you didn't print it and you didn't want to write it down, there's a few common ones on page 257 in your textbook. It's not as many as this sheet. It's not as comprehensive, but it could do potentially. And then also what we'll need for the second lesson today is on page 269 in your textbook. It's the prefixes we use for naming binary molecular compounds, which are, I can show you a picture of the textbook here. And it is the mono, di, tri, tetra, penta, hexa, hepta, octa, nona, deca. And so these guys we're going to learn on my second video today. So that's on page 269. So just so you guys have a couple reference spots about today. Okay, so we're going to name some acids. So I'm going to just put this to the side and you guys will be able to see what I'm up to. At the end of acids, you would, the day that we did them, you would have got this little exit ticket and we would be working on this to see how you made out. So I'm just going to write the numbers, the questions on here because it's a little bit more space for me to work. H3ASO4. Okay, let's look at this. It's an acid. How do we name it? How would I know how to name this? Where do I even start? How do I even know it's an acid? The major tip for an acid is that it starts with a hydrogen. So let's decompose this. Let's take the X, the crisscross that we did to get here, let's uncrisscross it. What would this look like decomposed? And so what I have for you is I have an H plus, and we know that hydrogen's a +1. And what is this thing? ASO4. Well, just by looking at this, undoing a crisscross, we would know ASO4 has a -3 charge. So this is our acid deconstructed. We know it's an acid because it has hydrogen atoms. That's what labels it an acid. These break off and go act acidically. And this is what we can see right here, ASO4 -3. This is arsenate. So let's name that. Arsenate, and this is hydrogen. Okay, so this is what was made up this H3SO4. So let's see, how would I name this? I'm trying to find a name for this. Well, I see here that our original polyatomic ion ended in ATE. So let's go back to this and say, look at this mnemonic. IATE, something icky. IC is in red. So when you're naming an acid, if it originally started with an ATE, it turns to an ick, an IC. So let's look at that from here. We have an ATE. So it really, when I'm naming the acid, I would go ARSENIC. I took the ATE and I put it to an IC. Can you guys see that? And so arsenic. arsenic. And so when you're naming an acid, you don't do anything with the hydrogen because they have hydrogens in it, unless it's the IDE, which we're going to do next, and we'll show you where the hydro goes. But in this case, the 8 went to ick, the 8 went to ick, and this would be called arsenic, and you always call them acid, just because they're acids. So the name for this guy is arsenic acid, okay? So that's our first one. Let's look at our second example, number 2. From this little exit ticket, it was HBr. All right, let's decompose this and see what we get. This one's easier to decompose. We can see the H plus, and we can see the Br minus 1. When Br is minus 1, it's called bromide. You probably know that. I see an IDE. This guy's hydrogen. Okay, the hydrogens are always there, so we kind of ignore them, okay? So when we look here, we look at bromide, IDE. Let's look at our little tricky mnemonics. We see an IDE, my ride has hydraulics, hydro-ics. So let's see what we do with that. So we have an IDE. So it's said to do hydro, and then you put in the word brome, and then you go ick. So I'm going to show you this again. The IDE went to hydro with an ick. So here we have the hydro, and you always put in the part that's not IDE, the brome, you see, and I've changed the IDE to the ick. So bromide went to hydrobromic, okay? So the name for this, HBr, is hydrobromic acid, okay? There's 2 examples. I really think it's a really good idea for you guys, again, to pause the video and write these 3 mnemonics down so you can see how you can go back and forth. It can go in either directions. It can go from us to ite, ick to ate. It goes both ways, which you're going to see next when we're looking at how to write an acid. So write this down somewhere, okay? So let's look at the second part of this. If I have something like this, they've given me the name, IODOUS, iodous acid. What does that look like? What does that chemical formula look like? Ugh, I don't know. That seems kind of hard. Let's look. OUS is in the name. OUS is in the name. So we know that it started with an ITE. So somewhere we're looking for an ITE. Well, we know it's iodite. So let's look. So ITEs are not found on the periodic table. They're found on the polyatomic sheet. And so when you look here, look, I found an iodite, ITE, iodite, which would turn into iodus. So look what iodite is. It's an IO2 minus 1. So we found an IODITE, iodite, which we knew it was going to be because it turned from an ite to an us. So iodite is an IO2 minus 1. And we know acids have hydrogens in them, and that we know hydrogen is a plus 1. So when we crisscross this, what would iodous acid look like? HiO2. So it would be HiO2 as the answer, okay? Because we went from, the name had us in it, so we know it originated with ite. And we know it was iodite because the beginning of the word was io. This us came from an ite. So we had to look up on the polyatomic sheet, iodite, and we found it, iodite. And then we could tell what it was. Okay, so let's do another one where you have the name. Acids are tricky. Acids are tricky, so I get that this stuff is hard. Just give it a try. So the next example was hydrophosphoric acid. So PHOSPHORIC. Hydrophosphoric acid. Phosphoric acid. Say that 5 times fast. Okay, so what would this guy look like? I don't know. How do we even start? Well, we look at our little thing here. I can see that I have a hydro and an ick in my name. Hydro and an ick. So I can see it started with the IDE because we have a hydro and an ick in our name. And so let's go back and look. If we took off the hydro and the ick, we would have what would we have? Phosphide. PHOSPHIDE. Okay? And what is phosphide? I know it's a little bit different in the end here. It's not phosphoride. It's phosphide. So that's one of the letters that gets bumped out. But we have phosphide. And so we have a P-3. When we look at phosphide, you know, IDEs are on the periodic table of elements because all of the negative ions end in IDE. So I can see here phosphide. It's a P-3. So we knew that this was a P-3. And what is always in an acid is hydrogen, which is a +1. Do a crisscross, we get H3P. So hydrophosphoric acid is H3P. Okay, so these are not easy, but I have faith that you'll be able to do them on the next assignment. Have a look through, try to use these and deconstruct them and use these 3 mnemonics, and hopefully this won't be too bad for you. If we were in class, we would be doing quite a few practice. Do the practice sheet and look at the answer key before you do the assignment. If anybody wants one-on-one tutoring with me, it is not a problem. Send me an email or a message, and we can set up a time for you and I to do one-on-one team meeting, or even 3-on-1 if you guys have a couple friends that have the same questions. I'm here to help, so let me know, and just send me an email or send me a message in our chat on Teams page, and I will set up a time to help kids. Or if there's a whole bunch of kids that want help because this is particularly new and hard, then no problem. You guys just zip me a line, okay? Let me know. Stay safe. Take care.